Nation, welcome inside the 2025 Raiders Media Roadshow. I'm your host, Vince Sapienza, coming to you from the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center in Henderson, Nevada, otherwise known as Raiders HQ. This is the show that talks all things silver and black, from the national perspective to the nitty-gritty of the roster. Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, what does it all mean moving forward? So without further ado, here's a list of what is on tap. Kimmi Chex will join us, as well as the former NFL MVP, Rich Gannon. James Jones drops by, as well as our very own Amber Theoharis. But let's go down to New Orleans on Media Row. Joining us now is NFL Network's own insider, Tom Pelissero. And Tom, a lot to get to, so let's just jump right in. I think about 2 weeks ago, there was a very different feeling for the Silver and Black in terms of the national perception of how they viewed this franchise and this team. 2 weeks later, Tom Brady pulling the strings, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, John Spytek. What is the viewing and what is the perception of the Raiders today?
Well, I would say this. In a division where you've got Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, who are back here in the Super Bowl again, you got Jim Harbaugh, you got Sean Payton, it behooved the Raiders to be bold, to do something big. And when you bring in Tom Brady to oversee the entire process and really try to help spearhead the transformation of the organization, you're kind of asking for something big to happen. And so, like you said, bringing in Pete Carroll, bringing in Chip Kelly, and now we'll see what that means in terms of the quarterback position, some of the personnel decisions that are made. Certainly, they're taking their shot here. I thought that Pete, even though he's 73 years old, he's going to be the oldest guy ever to be a head coach in an NFL game. He knows how to build a culture. He's won everywhere he's been. He's going to walk in the door with instant credibility, and it's going to give you a chance. Now, is the personnel going to all be there? Is the quarterback position going to be solidified? In other words, can you win in that division in 2025? We'll find out. I would say it's an uphill battle in the short term here, but that's precisely why you get somebody in who at least is going to bring a professionalism and has a plan into the organization. So obviously John Spytek, with his relationship long-standing with Tom Brady as well. Those two know each other. They're going to have a shared vision for this thing. And then Pete, for however long he decides to chomp that gum on the sideline, man, that the Raiders are going to be a competitive group, and they're going to have a feel about them, an identity that maybe was a little bit lacking in the past.
And it does feel like there is a vision in place with the hiring of Chip Kelly, an offensive innovator of sorts, a guy that's kind of done it a bunch of different ways, shares a like-mindedness in terms of running the ball and things of that nature. But you and I both know it all starts with the quarterback. So from what you're hearing, what is that plan at quarterback here in Las Vegas? Obviously, they have the 6th overall pick come April. The free agent market kind of is what it is. A few question marks there. What do you see at the quarterback position for the Raiders?
Well, I would say right now, Vince, it's early. That we're sitting here. It's the first week of February. We're still several weeks away from the combine, over a month away from free agency, and then the draft's at the end of April here. They've got a couple of guys. Gardner Minshew's under contract for another season. You've got Aiden O'Connell, who you've seen play. But certainly I anticipate that they're going to be doing something at a high level, whether that's through the draft, trade, or free agency, to bring in another quarterback. Now, this is a quarterback class that in the draft, and I don't really dive in until we get closer to combine time, just because there's a lot of other stuff going on in the NFL. But based on the conversations I've had last week in Mobile, talking to people within the league, I don't know that any of these quarterbacks, namely the two top guys, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, profile as, shoe-in type of these guys are definitely going 1-2. Could they end up getting drafted that high? Absolutely. But there's going to be a lot of teams, I can't say all, but there are going to be a lot of teams that don't have that type of grades on these guys, may not even have first-round grades on those players as well. There's going to be an urgency, though, because you've got so many teams, 6 or 7 in the top 10, that all need a quarterback. History would tell you there's a good chance those guys get pushed up. So are the Raiders in a position to, whether it's stand pat at 6 and draft 1 or potentially move up? Do they want to package future picks knowing all the other stuff that they have to do on their roster? That's going to tie into what comes first, which is free agency and potential trades. This is not a really robust year. It never is for quarterbacks in free agency. Sam Darnold's going to be your headliner. You don't even know yet, though, do the Vikings work out a deal? Could they potentially franchise tag him? You got a guy in Russell Wilson who Pete's very familiar with. I would have bought Russell Wilson to Vegas a little bit more had Pete hired Darrell Bevell as the offensive coordinator. Chip's won in different ways. I don't know it's a great fit. Never say never, but it's probably not as high of a probability. Justin Fields is available along with the rest of those guys from the 2021 draft who all ended up getting traded last offseason and are now on new teams and had their options declined. But those are flyers. Somewhere in there, they're going to find a pathway here to get a quarterback into Las Vegas, all of which is a long way of saying it's too soon to say definitively what avenue they explore, but I would anticipate they're looking at everything right now.
I do want to touch on Chip Kelly one more time. We were able to meet with him, and virtually that is, after he was announced as the Raiders offensive coordinator. And he said a year ago he couldn't have imagined coming back to the NFL. He's now 7 years removed from the National Football League. But once he got the call from Tom Brady, John Spytek, and Pete Carroll, he felt like this was a decision he had to make and wanted to make and got him excited. So I'm curious, how real is that TB12 allure that is now surrounding Las Vegas?
Well, I mean, it impacts everything. Now, Tom is not the head coach. He's not the general manager, but he is involved. To what extent is he around next year, knowing that he's got duties at Fox, he's got other businesses, he lives in Florida. It's not like Tom's in the office, going 9 to 5 every day, but certainly he's going to be involved in decisions. I know that certainly weighed on even the Ben Johnson situation, where I don't believe if Tom Brady is not in Vegas, I don't think Ben even considers taking the interview with the Raiders. But there's such a great deal of respect for Tom Brady. It at least gave Ben Johnson pause to say, okay, I want to have a conversation here. And it was really something intriguing. Ultimately, he decided to go to the team that he always wanted to be with, which was the Bears. With Chip, there's a lot of things, involved there. Chip's had a really interesting career, from being a highly successful college head coach to being a NFL head coach who was pretty good, made the playoffs out of the gate. Then things didn't end well, goes to San Francisco. It's a disaster there, not all on Chip. Goes back to the college level head coach, leaves to go in the same conference to be an offensive coordinator, wins the national title, and now is back as an NFL offensive coordinator. Like, you don't see a resume like that a whole lot in football. And what I'll be really interested to see with Chip is what offense does he put out there? Because you're right. He's always believed in running the ball. He's had some of the most creative run schemes that we've seen. He kind of reinvented it a little bit at UCLA, and then obviously with the Buckeyes, at least in the playoff post-Michigan game, they were really, really good and took them all the way to winning a championship here. In his history in the NFL, he's leaned more toward quarterbacks who can move, but he also, has had success with, a Nick Foles. It'll be interesting to see, what do they actually want to accomplish here? It's not the pure speed, we're going to run 100 plays a game stuff. He tried that in Philly. It's not really something you can do at the NFL level here. Certainly, though, you're going to see a lot of Chip's different influences, and who they end up with at quarterback is going to help, shape what exactly this offense looks like.
Yeah, no doubt. The dynamic between Pete and Chip is going to be a fascinating one. Mark Sanchez, who played under both of them, described it this way. If Pete says 6, Chip says half a dozen. They're saying the same thing, but they get there in different ways. Before we let you go, I want to ask you about kind of the NFL in general. Never a dull day, as you know, but Monday and Tuesday, we got the trade request from Myles Garrett. Cooper Kupp is apparently getting kicked out of L.A. Obviously, those are two massive names that would be on the trade market. Raider Nation would love to have two of those names, but realistically, where do you see those two situations unfolding?
Well, with Myles Garrett, the Browns don't want to trade him, and they made that clear for weeks when Myles Garrett's team was engaging with them that, hey, we stand ready to pay him. He's got 2 years and $45 million left on his deal. They're going to give him a big raise. They're going to give him a big extension. But for Myles Garrett, from everything I've been told, this is not about money. This is not like the Brandon Ayuk situation last year where you request a trade because the team's not willing to pay you. This is Myles Garrett saying, I'm 29 years old. I don't want to be a part of a rebuild year. I want to go someplace else to compete for championships. I want out. We're probably still quite a ways away from figuring out exactly where this lands with Myles Garrett. We'll see how much each side digs in their heels and what buttons Myles Garrett in particular is willing to push. Does he, is he willing to make this ugly? He's right now, he's walking around Radio Row doing interviews. What type of stuff do they decide to air out publicly? Does any of that influence the Browns thinking at this point? TBD on that, but just remember this. You already, if you're the Raiders, have to do a new deal probably at some point sooner than later with Max Crosby. I don't know, barring a trade of Max, I don't know that you've got the money to put, let's say, $80 million a year into two edge rushers when there's so many other positions you got to build on your team. Cooper Kupp's in a different situation because he's due $20 million this year. He's 31 years old, missed a good chunk of the last 3 years because of injuries. When he's been healthy, he's shown he can still play, but the production hasn't been there over the past several seasons. He's due a $7.5 million roster bonus in March. $5 million of that is fully guaranteed. The Rams could well just decide we're going to pay the additional $2.5 million. That pays down his contract. Now another team's going 1 year, $12.5 million. Okay, we're willing to give up a little bit more in terms of a trade. That's probably realistically a day 3 type of pick, maybe a day 2 pick or something with a performance-based increase on what the pick is. That might be a little bit more palatable as the Raiders are looking to add weapons here. And this is not saying anything negative about Cooper Kupp, but the reality is trading for a 31-year-old wide receiver with a significant recent injury history usually is not something that is going to draw in a bunch of teams. But I do think that at that number for Cooper Kupp, knowing what type of teammate he is, the locker room guy he is, I believe there's probably a pretty decent chance the Rams will be able to trade him here in the coming weeks.
Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network. A couple more before we let you go. You are a wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate your time. The Raiders' defense has a little continuity. A lot of free agents on the defensive side, but continuity in returning Patrick Graham as defensive coordinator. How big of a surprise was that? And when you look at the Raiders' free agents, you would imagine that some of the familiar names might come back. One name sticks out more than most in Trayvon Merrick, who seems to have done himself very well as his agent, looking for probably top-of-the-market type money as it comes to that safety position.
Well, the safety market has been very lucrative in recent years, and Trayvon Merrick certainly has put himself in a position to be in that conversation. If I'm not mistaken, Marcus Epps is also a free agent, so there's some moving parts. But everything is going to be moving parts for the Raiders as they go into a new era. Bringing back Patrick Graham would have been a surprise toward the end of last season. And if Antonio Pierce were still the head coach, I don't believe Patrick Graham is back. But Tom Brady is a big fan of Pat Graham. They both have Patriots ties. And Pete Carroll is a big fan of Patrick Graham as well. The Jaguars, after interviewing Patrick Graham twice for their head coaching position, they were trying to get him as the defensive coordinator right up until the night that he signed. But again, it was Brady and Carroll convinced him, hey, we want you here. We know what you can do. I think you've seen the evolution of Patrick Graham, his style, even more so than scheme. He's very adaptable. He's very smart. That was a big get on a staff where there probably are not going to be a whole lot of assistant coaches that are retained. Getting Pat Graham back was really big for Vegas.
Final one, do we have a bold take on the Raiders offseason? A big, bold move from Tom Pelissero?
Well, everybody should be thankful that I'm not the one making the moves here. You don't want me, pulling the trigger on trades and stuff like that. I just think that it's all going to come down to the quarterback, right? And I believe that, if you look at John Spytek's history, where he's been, the way they built that thing with the Bucs, they've done everything from using the number 1 pick on Jameis Winston to signing a late-stage Tom Brady, which might seem like, oh, that's such a no-brainer, the greatest quarterback ever. There were only like 3 teams that were in on Tom Brady at the end, but they showed with an older coach who had been out of the game to come back and win with a veteran quarterback. You're able to make that a success. Is that going to happen in 2025 with the Las Vegas Raiders? I think that it's fair to say the deck is stacked against them having short-term success, particularly in that division. But let's see how quickly they can get that thing moving in the right direction. The key here is the culture has got to be right. And then you've got to answer the quarterback position. It's not the only thing that they need to do. I believe they will get calls on Max Crosby, which could be a bold thing. They're going to have decisions to make, again, because eventually you're going to have to pay the guy as well. But to me, it all comes down to how do they answer the quarterback spot. I would be really surprised if they go into next season and the top 2 spots in the depth chart are occupied by AOC and Gardner Minshew. Never say never on that front, but I do believe that they're going to fully explore every avenue to get what they need at that position.
He is NFL insider Tom Pelissero. Tom, thanks so much for the time. Be well.
You got it, Vince.
Still ahead here on the 2025 Raiders Media Roadshow, I sit down with NFL Network's Kimmi Chex. Get the national perspective on the silver and black, and you don't want to miss her bold prediction on the Raiders offseason.
It's game day. The day we've been waiting for. And this is more than just a game. It's a passion, a lifestyle. It's time to suit up, Raider Nation. This is Raiders football, where we all bleed silver and black. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Here at the Raider Image, you're part of our team. every hat, every piece of gear. Let your loyalty show out. Whether you're in the stands or cheering from home, we've got your back. Feel the confidence, own the game.
We
are the Raider Image. Your game, your gear. Exclusively at the Raider Image.
I'm going to tell you, the gum companies are just skyrocketing right now market-wise. I think it's a great hire. I know people are a little concerned because he's a little bit older. Do we not remember Pete Carroll days, guys? This guy is a legend. He's got Chip Kelly coming in now. I feel very strongly that this was a good hire.
Welcome back inside the 2025 Raiders Media Row. Joining us now is Kimmi Chex of the NFL Network. And Kimmi, how is Super Bowl week treating you? We saw you opening night on the dais with the stars of Super Bowl 59. How's everything going down there?
It's so good to see you. Thank you guys for having me. It's amazing. This is so fun. This is my 6th Super Bowl, which is crazy to think about. But first time for a Super Bowl in New Orleans for me. And the city has been incredible. You mentioned opening night that I hosted on Monday, kind of our opening ceremonies between the two teams. And our opening kind of flair and flavor into New Orleans. We had high school marching bands, some Mardi Gras crews, incredible food, an incredible brass band. You started to feel the energy of not only Mardi Gras, but the energy of Super Bowl all in one. And it was an incredible way to start an incredible week.
Yeah, I know a lot of excitement, obviously, in New Orleans. A ton of excitement here in Las Vegas for the Silver and Black. I think a month ago, there was a lot of questions with this franchise and the Raiders, but we fast forward a bit. Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, John Spytek, Tom Brady kind of pulling the strings a little bit. What is the national perception of the Silver and Black now compared to even just a few weeks ago?
I mean, you look at your coaching staff and the guys that you just named, you say, oh, all right, we've got some competitors and some contenders now. I think when the national media looks at the Raiders and we start to kind of evaluate all 32 franchises, of course, Las Vegas within that, you look at the divisions, and the AFC West for years has been so competitive because of the Kansas City Chiefs, but because of other teams as well. The Chargers, you guys, the Broncos. The AFC West, I think, in my humble opinion, is now the best coached division in football, and that's going to be really interesting and see Pete Carroll kind of get into the mix now, and then the questions around what you guys are going to do ahead of the draft and even free agency. This is a team that's real deal. You have the right players now in place, players as in, front office staff and coaching staff to really make a run. So, I'm interested to see how all the puzzle pieces land together. And I think the media is going to have a lot of fun talking about Vegas this upcoming season.
Yeah, there's a nice healthy debate on what's the best division in football. The NFC North has a thing or two to say about that with Detroit and the Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. But when you look at the AFC West and you look at the quarterbacks that are there, the Raiders seem to have their coaching staff now kind of set with the credibility and everything that goes with it. But now the question is the quarterback position, because you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes, Bo Nix, Justin Herbert. So as you look at the Raiders and their future, where do you find their quarterback to be?
I think that there are going to be some incredible quarterbacks who are available in free agency or could be potentially traded. And that's where I think you can have some interesting conversations. Now with Pete Carroll in the mix, you potentially look to Pittsburgh. And, Mike Tomlin has gone on to say that he guesses that he's going to sign only one quarterback, only one of those guys next season. You start to think, Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll, they obviously have a relationship. You're curious to see what Tom Brady's take is on all of this and the ways in which he can advise the team and kind of help with that perspective. I think it could be a veteran quarterback move for Las Vegas that really gets them up there with the best in the rest of the division. And then, if they want to draft someone and continue to develop someone under, their wings, then that's totally fine. But I think a veteran move is going to be the key for Vegas.
We're talking to Kimmi Chex of the NFL Network. Let's stay on that and go that possible route of a quarterback in the draft. You know, when you have the 6th overall pick like the Raiders do, there's going to be a lot of mock drafts among the fan base in Raider Nation. And there's a lot, all of a sudden, that Shedeur Sanders falls to that 6th overall pick. We obviously know the connection between he and Tom Brady, the TB12, the NIL, and everything that goes with it. Shedeur Sanders in Las Vegas feels like you connect the dots. It all makes sense.
It does. So is this your official mock draft now? I love that you say, all of the mocks, because we'll probably have, thousands and thousands ahead of that last weekend in April here in a few months. But Shedeur Sanders in Vegas could be electric. I think it could be incredible for the fan base. I think he's a guy that could embrace the Raider energy. He's a guy that could immediately come into an organization and spark some magic and spark some fun. But I think it would just be developing him. And we understand and know how incredible Pete Carroll is at that, and I think that could be really interesting, as well as Chip Kelly on the offensive side. Like, all of these pieces could work. So maybe that 6th pick with Shedeur Sanders could be the move that takes the AFC West maybe out of the Chiefs' hands and some others' hands, and eventually gets it over to Vegas.
There's just a sense of that silver and black swagger with Shedeur. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a family thing.
Oh my God, he would make it like so swaggy. It would be insane. That would be the move.
Obviously, quarterback is a position of need for this franchise. I mean, when you look at this team in its totality, do you see any other key pieces or positions that, hey, Raiders need to kind of put a microscope under this position, whether it's free agency or the draft?
I think obviously you guys did such an incredible job of grabbing Brock Bowers in the draft last year, and just seeing how that one tight end position completely transformed kind of the offensive efficiency. That's going to be the key. And now it's asking yourself, okay, well, what exactly is that? You guys have a great defense, but there are some pieces where, maybe you need a little bit more help. But I really think it's going to be up to Pete Carroll to look at the roster in totality, to find the holes, and then say, all right, what is going to be the best hole to fill that gets us closer to a championship immediately? I think for a lot of fans, the draft can feel like the one chance to just grab all the pieces, put them onto our superstar gloves, and then go out and compete. But it starts position by position. So I don't know. I think Pete's going to have to take a look at that roster, then figure out what is the number one thing outside of quarterback we need to land to get right immediately and have that impact.
So free agency, the draft, but there's also that trade speculation that runs rampant this time of year. And man, what a week it has already been between Myles Garrett saying, hey, I'm out of Cleveland, and Cooper Kupp being told, I'm being booted out of L.A. So I want to start with Myles Garrett.
I know.
The Silver and Black Raider Nation, they're salivating at a possibility. Max on one side, Christian Wilkins in the middle, and then Myles Garrett on the other. Could you even fathom?
No, that's where those other AFC West quarterbacks are going to be like, no, do not let this happen. Do not let this happen. We can't have, Max and Myles. Like, we could get obliterated there in the backfield. We don't want that. But, I mean, if that could happen, that would be huge, and that would be an energizer. I think Max is such an incredible personality and such a leader for your organization and for your team, and for him to have another huge dog in that fight to rally that defense could be absolutely incredible. But I know no other quarterbacks in the league would be happy with that decision.
Yeah, Myles Garrett obviously chasing championships. He says it's not going from Cleveland to Canton. It's about collecting Lombardis and championships. And I know for Cooper Kupp, in that instance, he's ready to go get another one as he did in L.A. But he's kind of an interesting target as well for possibly the Raiders, for the simple fact you have a Brock Bowers, breaks all the records he does. And then you have Jacoby Myers, who went over 1,000 yards for the first time. Feels like, depending on what the Raiders do at quarterback, all of a sudden this retool or rebuild, whatever you want to call it, in Las Vegas might be a little quicker than maybe some anticipated.
And that would be incredibly excited, not only for the organization, but for the fans as well. And to be honest, I want to see Pete Carroll go in there and crush and to win in the staff that he's building, the guys that you've talked about. To do that in his first season, kind of back in the league in his first season with the Raiders, if you were to get all of those chess pieces together, this could be a team with the right quarterback that could take it. Obviously you'd have to get through the division, which is going to always be an incredibly tough feat with those other, teams we've mentioned. But it could happen. You guys are going to get both Myles Garrett and Cooper Kupp. World, watch out. But even one of those guys would be, a huge asset to the team.
Age, energy was always a question about Pete Carroll coming in. I think he knocked all of that to the wayside in his introductory press conference here in Las Vegas. I want to go back to the national perspective now. With Pete Carroll in particular, feels like nobody's talking about age anymore. All of a sudden it's like, hey, this is the right guy.
No one's talking about age. Everyone's like, ooh, this was a really good move, and this is going to be a tricky team now to compete against. So agers, beware, bygones be bygones. Let's let the age go by the wayside, and let's let him have some fun and let it rip in Las Vegas.
No ageism here whatsoever in Las Vegas. Kimmi Chex with the NFL Network. Before we let you go, give me a bold prediction for the Silver and Black this offseason. I know we've talked about a bunch of different scenarios, but what's Kimmi got in the works for a bold prediction with the Las Vegas Raiders?
A bold prediction, I really think it would be incredible if Myles Garrett joined that squad and was alongside Max Crosby in the fight to be one of the best defenses in the NFL. I think if that could happen, that's my bold prediction, and that would be a game changer for the franchise. Plus, a little bit of extra fun in Las Vegas.
Thanks so much, Kimmi. But the conversation with the Silver and Black does not stop here. Make sure you tune in to Raider Nation Radio every Monday through Friday. It starts with the morning tailgate with me, followed by the Rich Eisen Show, JT the Brick, and then Unnecessary Roughness with Q Myers. But now it's time to get back out to Media Row with our own Amber Theoharis, who's talking to a Super Bowl champion.
Here with our good friend James Jones. You always can catch us on Raiders Game Day.
Yes, you can.
And looking forward to next year, because last year was tough and a lot needs to change on this roster. They got a new GM. We haven't talked. You and I haven't been on the same show since then. What are your thoughts about moving on Antonio Pierce? Now it's Pete Carroll, bringing in somebody that's a veteran that's won Super Bowls, and also John Spytek, who is a Tom Brady guy, won a Super Bowl with that roster in Tampa.
Yeah. I'm not going to say I love it because I loved Antonio Pierce, but I do love it because you get a guy in Pete Carroll who we've seen go from USC, developing that program, bringing in a lot of good players, winning a national championship. Then you see him go to Seattle, and you see him develop a really good player in Russell Wilson, put together a really good roster, and go to 2 Super Bowls and win 1. So I know everybody wants to go to age and say, he's 70 and this and that. That's okay. He knows how to develop. He knows how to build a roster, and he knows how to win championships. So for me, I absolutely love it. I think Pete Carroll's going to be phenomenal for the Raiders. I think he's going to do a really good job, and he knows how it's supposed to look. He knows the pieces they need to add to go compete for a championship.
Look, JJ, we all know they need a quarterback. AOC showed us some things, but don't know if that is the future of the franchise. And you look around the rest of the AFC West, and you've got these Super Bowl contending coaches coming in. Of course, Andy Reid is already there, but they all have their quarterback, right? Jim Harbaugh has Justin Herbert.
Yes.
Pete Carroll's going to need to get his. Bo Nix is with Sean Payton. Of course, Andy Reid is here at the Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes. I feel like that's the number one thing they're going to have to do. What are your thoughts on the draft? And at number 6, do you think that number 1, Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders will still be there? And number 2, would you take them with the first-round pick? Because there's a lot of debate.
I do think they would be there. Now, if you're asking me if I would take them, I would not take them.
Okay.
I would love to see Pete Carroll go into free agency, and I would love to see him get a guy like Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Get a guy maybe like Kirk Cousins, even get a guy like Justin Fields. And the only reason why I'm saying that is I feel like all 3 of those dudes have more upside than Cam Ward and Shedeur. I do. I think Cam Ward and Shedeur are developmental projects. You want to get in a veteran guy with him, let them learn behind, and when he's ready to play, put him out there. And I don't necessarily know that you use a 6th pick on that. I don't know. There is no Bo Nix, no Caleb Williams, no Jaden Daniels in the draft this year. So I would go get a guy in free agency like a Russell Wilson, and I would use that pick. Maybe it's a pass rusher that's there. Maybe it's somebody that can help this football team immediately right now to go win. But I'm not extremely high on these 2 quarterbacks.
Do you think that this defense, when healthy, because you're going to get Christian Wilkins back, you're going to get Corian Bennett,
Crosby.
Where do you think the additions need to be made on the defense that aren't already there?
Yeah. My earpiece says Max Crosby, Myles Garrett trade. That's
They're
what
just coming in.
You know what I'm saying?
Myles Garrett. I mean, look, he wants out of Cleveland.
He wants a trade.
It's going to cost a lot, though.
Pete Carroll has always been through defense, and that is why I'm excited to see what he's going to do in the draft, because he has not won with bona fide quarterbacks, like big-time quarterbacks. Legion of Boom was a problem on the defensive side of the ball. He built that.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a lot of free agents on that. He built that. I would love to see them build a little bit more in the trenches, get another linebacker in there, get another pass rusher to go on the other side of Max. And if you could get a big-time guy like Myles Garrett in the trade, or you can go get a guy at number 6 to go rush the passer, I would love to see them do that, because the best thing, if you don't have a bona fide quarterback, is to get after the quarterback. So now maybe we need to get a plan to get after Patty, to get after Justin Herbert, to get after Bo Nix. So I would love to see them do something like that, but that would be my first stop. You got Max Crosby, you got Wilk in the inside, get another pass rusher, bona fide pass rusher on the outside to go with Max, and we got action.
If I'm looking at this roster, one thing that sticks out to me that not a lot of people are talking about is, I think, the lack of a running back. We saw this year in NFL. This was the return of the running backs.
Yes, it was.
There was a lot of teams that thought they could get by without running backs or running backs by committee, and look at Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
Look what he was able to do. Look at Bijan Robinson, what he's doing with the Falcons. Would you want to see them draft? I mean, there's some running backs in this draft.
Now, the blessing about that is this running back class is deep.
It is.
This is a deep, deep running back class. So you don't got to get one in the first.
Yeah.
You could get one in the second and the third, or the third and the fourth. You can really get some really good running back value in those later rounds. So I think the Raiders are in a really good position when you talk about running backs, because there's a lot of good ones. So they'll be able to get one. I don't think it's something we need to address in free agency, but if you can get a solid one in them second and third rounds, that's how you build your football team. They definitely need a guy that can get the home run hit, for sure.
You love Tom Brady being with the organization, somebody that's the GOAT, that has many rings and knows how to do it. Look, you've been inside winning organizations. You have seen how the sausage is made. You know what needs to happen. You have to have that football mind, even beyond the GM, correct? A real, true football mind that knows winning culture. And I feel like that's what Tom Brady is.
And absolutely. And I think people underestimate, like, just bringing in a coach that has been successful as an offensive coordinator or something, and think he's going to just change it around. It's hard to build a football team. It's hard to develop football players. Like, it's not a lot of good coaches out there. And that's why I'm excited about Pete, because Pete has shown you he can do that, and he knows what it looks like. Like, it's certain players that people might want to cut, and Pete may be like, no. I know where I want to use them. It's certain players that might be like, hey, you a tight end. No. You a linebacker.
Yeah.
It's certain players like that Pete Carroll does a really good job. Richard Sherman was a wideout. And he said, no. You finna play corner. You long, you know what I'm saying? So for me, he just knows how to develop a football team. Obviously, you have Tom in there. They know how it's supposed to look. I think they got a really good team together of how it's supposed to look. I think they're going to put together a really good squad.
Don't forget that Pete Carroll has done it before as far as finding a quarterback that nobody was really looking out of, what was it, NC State? Or was Russell Wilson.
Third round,
Yeah, third round. They had just paid Matt Flynn a bunch of money, and he had the guts to say, like, I don't care what your contract status is.
And that's another thing
we need to win.
Yep, that's
and this Russell Wilson is gonna get us to the promised land, and he did twice.
Yep.
Didn't win the second one.
And it's a dude that yelled at his press conference that would have got him that second one. But we're talking about that.
We're not going to talk about that decision.
We'll talk about that later. But no, man, I love it. I think Pete Carroll, he knows what he's doing. But a veteran quarterback is going to be huge for him.
Yeah.
I think a veteran quarterback for this team is going to be huge. I do not think bringing in a rookie quarterback, especially knowing that we have so many holes in the roster, I would love to see a veteran quarterback come in here. If you do draft a rookie, let him sit, let him learn, and then throw him out there. But build this roster first. We're not going to compete with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Bo Nix if we don't build our roster.
I love what I'm seeing right now from the Raider fans. They're excited. I feel like they are the change. I think anytime you have change, you kind of get hope and you get excitement about Pete Carroll. So I know the Raider fans miss you, JJ. You got to come back.
I'll be back on the field or just to talk?
Both. Oh, you're going to catch a couple passes?
My hamstrings. I've been oiling my hamstrings.
You've been oiling them up?
Yeah.
All right. Looks like you could catch some passes still. You can keep in shape there. James, we appreciate you so much. Thanks for stopping by.
When we return here on the 2025 Raiders Media Row Show, JT the Brick catches up with the MVP Rich Gannon, his thoughts, Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly.
Football is life.
Football is family. When I see them, when they're supporting me, it makes me help push through when I'm frustrated, and then it just makes me really happy that they're there for me.
Football is limitless. 1, 2, 3, when I play, it's just amazing, and I'm very blessed to have the opportunity to play this sport, and I just feel amazing when I play flag football. So to me, it really means a lot.
Myers is in. Touchdown.
Football is essential.
Football is a blessing.
Football teaches you discipline, teaches you relationships, how to be a good teammate. It's been a wild ride, but one that shaped me for life.
Traffic is picked off by Robert Spillane.
Football is everything. Football is everything.
Football is passion. If you're not passionate about it, then it'll eventually show. Because you have to love the game, and then the game will love you back. Football is happiness.
Football is resilience. Football is Raider Nation. And for so many young players, the journey starts here.
I'm so excited about this one for the Raiders. I think that Pete Carroll is one of the best coaches, obviously, of all time, whether it's been college or the NFL level. And he just gets players. He's set up winning cultures every single place that he has been. He is absolutely going to be a big part of doing that with the Raiders now. So I'm super excited about Carroll in that spot. I mean, they're rounding out a really good coaching staff. I'm especially excited about the Chip Kelly hire because Chip is somebody who, like, all right, yeah, okay, it's head coaching. He wasn't in the league as long as he wanted to be as a head coach, but I liked what he was doing at UCLA. I love what I saw from him at Ohio State, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to do for that Raiders offense. They're obviously still going to be getting their guys in the building over the next couple of years and building out, but I'm very excited about what Chip Kelly can mean for this team.
This group's a lot of fun. We've been together, like I said, 3 years now. When we started, we were very, very young. We know exactly what everybody's going to do, and obviously it's turned into success on the field, that relationship that we all have.
Everything worked out in our favor. I feel like our chemistry getting together, the defense stopping Moapa. It means a lot to me, especially my senior year, coming on, being in the showcase. But I wouldn't be able to do this without my quarterback throwing me the ball, having the chemistry with her. Catching, blocking, everything was working out perfectly fine. Everything was good.
Don't stay in here. Don't stay in here.
Rich Gannon joins us. Rich, good to see you on Radio Row, buddy.
JT, it's great to be with you, brother. Every year we make this is like a tradition for us.
Absolutely. What do you think of this coaching staff? Since we last talked, we talked every Monday for 18 weeks. What do you think?
Well, I'm excited. I know Pete. You know, when I came into the league in '87, Pete was on our staff in Minnesota. So he was a secondary coach in Minnesota. Bud Grant hired him, and of course, he stayed on that staff with Jerry Burns. So we were together for 3 or 4 years in Minnesota. And Pete would come after practice, and he'd have competitions with the quarterback and throwing competitions. So he'd hit the crossbar for $20. And, you know, I really got to know a lot of the game from talking to Pete about coverages and disguising intentions and things like that. But I've known him a long time. Even when he was in Seattle, I went down to USC to talk to the quarterbacks. I think Pete brings stability to the position. He brings leadership. He brings experience. He brings energy and a passion. And I'm just really, I thought this was a critical hire, as you know. And to get somebody like Pete, I think we're just fortunate. And not only that, but someone who can put together a really good coaching staff.
Wow, Rich, going back to the Vikings, and everybody talks about this competition that he does at practice. You've seen all the other coaches throughout your Raider run. What makes him different practicing with this team and having them emotionally ready?
I think his ability to prepare a football team, and how do you do that? If you're going against a scout team all the time, it's not going to be you know, as competitive. And I think he ones versus ones is a big thing for him. You know, competition Thursdays and things like that. You know, so I think he does a great job of that. I think he does a great job motivating players. I think challenging players, developing leaders on the team. He's a very smart, intuitive coach, and yeah, I'm just excited for the Raiders because, you know, we've had so much turnover at that position. 9 different head coaches since 2011, tied for the most in the league with Jacksonville. And now we've got somebody who's been there, has done it, has won national championships, won a Super Bowl, been to another Super Bowl, and has had success everywhere he's been.
You saw what Scott Turner did with Norv, and we talked about it every Monday. What does Chip Kelly bring?
Chip brings a different perspective, I think, to it. I think he's got a wide open approach. I think he's very aggressive. He can change speeds with you. He can go up tempo. He's willing to incorporate a number of different schemes, whether it's RPOs, whether it's attacking the edge, whether it's a screen game. opening up the edges, empty sets, things like that. I think the biggest challenge for Chip is just finding that quarterback, you know, and I think you've got a young quarterback in Aiden O'Connell, I think deserves the opportunity to compete. I think the way you do it is make that room more competitive and bring in you know, a couple more quarterbacks, but that's going to be really important because I think there's some pieces in place. You got a great young tight end. You got some guys that I think that have developed along that offensive line, but you got to find the quarterback.
What do you think about John Spytek working with Brady, finding the quarterback, that whole connection there? Because from getting from 6 to 1 or 2 is going to be expensive, and everyone's talking about Jackson Dart, but is 6 too early to go get him?
Well, not only that, but I think you got to look at free agency. I think there's a couple quarterbacks in free agency that are intriguing prospects. I would say this: I'm excited. Anytime Tom's going to be involved in helping the quarterback position, I think you got something going on. I would say this: there's been so much turnover at that position. They've got to get some stability there. You got to get some production and consistency. I think the biggest challenge for a lot of front offices is identifying who that player is, and then once you get him into the building, can you develop him? And that's been a bit of a challenge for the Raiders as of late. But you know, Tom, I think, knows what the qualities and characteristics are that you're looking for at the quarterback position.
Rich Gannon's our guest. I've been dying to ask you this because Pete, being at his age, and he's got energy for a lifetime, but 3 to 4 years to develop a quarterback, or 2 or 3 years compared to getting a veteran right out of the gate who can fit into his system seems to make more sense to me.
Well, there's a couple guys out there that I think, you know, I think would make some sense. And, you know, obviously people are going to talk about Sam Darnold. I would say don't forget about Daniel Jones. I think when you look at their career paths, they're very similar. I think Daniel Jones does have some upside. So, you know, I think there's there are veteran quarterbacks out there that you have to take a look at. I don't think this is a really strong draft class when you look at the quarterbacks in this draft class. And I would just simply tell you that when you look at the volatility of the head coaching position, it's not like you can come into an organization and say, we're going to draft a quarterback and I need 3 or 4 years to develop him. You may not get to the 3rd year.
Right.
So a lot of these coaches think to themselves, well, let's go find somebody who's already been through the ups and downs, who's already been through the turmoil and the adversity, that has come out of it, and that a guy that's played football, that has experience, that can come in and quickly pick up our system, maybe that makes more sense. So I think the Raiders will look under, and Tom Brady and the coaching staff, Pete, I think we'll look under every stone and turn over every stone to figure out who the best quarterback is for the Raiders.
Were you surprised that Jacksonville let Patrick Graham get away, not getting the head coaching position, but not giving him more to be the DC? I'm happy we got him back. That would have been a big loss.
We just talked to Tony Pizzelli, and I'm excited for Tony because I think he brings some leadership to that organization, the much needed a voice and somebody that's not going to take a lot of nonsense. So he'll get that thing turned around, but I'm excited for Patrick to come back. I've always been impressed with what he's done. You sit in the production meetings with him. JT, you and I have been in those meetings. He's a sharp guy. I think the players relate to him. I think he does a great job adapting his scheme to the personnel that he has. I think that was a smart move by Pete.
Last one, tomorrow's Eric Allen's yes or no day. Thumbs up or thumbs down, and I know how much he means to you. This is a big one.
You know, just my sense of talking to some people around here, I think a lot of people are excited and think it's time for Eric. You know, he's been so close, JT, so many times. As you know, he's a friend of ours and is a former teammate. And I just know from talking to a lot of those voters over the years and just trying to make the argument, I played against him. I played against him when he was in Philadelphia. I know how difficult a player he was. He went to New Orleans. But when he came to the Raiders, I competed against him every day in practice.
I know.
I had Jerry Rice out there. I had Tim Brown out there. And I just saw these guys. It was hard for us to get completions in practice. So I know what type of player he is. I know what type of leader he was, what type of teammate, and most importantly, what type of person he is.
You told me he made you better, and you were an MVP in this league. So he had a lot to do with that in practice.
You know, I always felt like, going against him and Charles Woodson in practice, by the time we got to the games, it was easy.
Good to see you, Rick.
You're the best, buddy. Thanks.
Still to come on the 2025 Raiders Media Roadshow, Amber, Theoharis, and I sit down and chat about the current Raiders roster. What are the priorities heading into free agency?
Good morning. Here to introduce General Manager of the Las Vegas Raiders, John Spytek, and the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, Pete Carroll.
Cannot express how grateful and excited I am to be here, to be given this opportunity to be a part of an iconic cornerstone franchise like this.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's good. What a place.
I'm extremely honored and humbled to be up here with that opportunity out in front of us, and I cannot be more excited to get started.
It's my love for the game that goes all the way back to the basics of it. It's really exciting to have the opportunity to do it again. It's because it's that chase and that pursuit of the passion that we want to find. So
good.
It's about competing. It's about being the best you can possibly be. Everybody that comes to our program has a unique quality that makes them them. And I'm going to try to figure out what that is and find a way to bring that to the surface. And in doing so, you give everybody the chance to be as good as they can possibly be.
Oh, man, they won. They won. It's going to be a great hire. He's going to take my little nephew, Brock Bowers, to another level. Yeah, really proud for Pete. He's Seahawk from the heart. But because of Brock, if I had another team, it would be the Raiders. So now I get to really cheer for them a little bit for two reasons.
It's game day, the day we've been waiting for. And this is more than just a game. It's a passion, a lifestyle. Here at the Raider Image, you're part of our team. Whether you're in the stands or cheering from home, we've got your back. Feel the confidence, own the game.
We
are the Raider Image. Your game, your gear, exclusively at the Raider Image.
There's a salary cap for player salaries. You're trapped within this limited number of dollars you can spend, and you have to get creative with how you manage the cap and where you put the dollars and how you maneuver it around. There's nothing stopping you from throwing endless money at things like the staff, right? You bring in Pete Carroll, you bring in Chip Kelly. Like, these are not one and done names. You're not moving on from them next year, even if you don't get the quarterback again and next season doesn't go well. You're doing this with the understanding that they are the guys for the future.
I think it starts with attracting big money into the organization and helping Mark with that. And, to Mark's credit, I think a huge piece of this is like how his priority is just to make the organization better now. Tom brought in guys that he really respects, coached against Pete Carroll. Chip Kelly had influence on the offense they ran in New England over a certain period of his career. Chip was consulting with the Patriots, and so Brady had some background with Chip as well and what they were able to do with the Patriots offense to modernize it, about 10, 12 years ago. And then John Spytek is a guy he worked with for 3 years in Tampa, worked very closely with in Tampa.
The Pete Carroll thing alone, I think, just professionalizes the whole organization, which isn't to say that it wasn't a professional, but you know what I mean? You've had like some instability and lots of changes over the years, and people who are getting their first shot or second shot, people who we are not sure that they can coach at the NFL level and give an opportunity to take over the Raiders. Now you bring in Pete Carroll, we know he knows how to run an organization. We know that he knows how to win.
Thanks so much, JT. Some great insight on the background as well as the long-term vision for the new leadership staff in place for the Silver and Black. But now it's time to dig into the roster, and to do that, we go back to Media Row. Joining us now is our very own Amber Theoharis on Radio Row in New Orleans. First things first, how's Radio Row treating you? I know it is a ton of work, but you seem to be holding up quite well.
It is a little bit crazy out here. I think this is my 14th Super Bowl, though, so I'm a veteran and you're showing your age, Vince. This is Media Row now. We've gone beyond radio because this is podcast row, TV row, live stream row. It's so much fun to be here. Every time you come down to any Super Bowl, you realize how lucky you are to cover this game and be around. It's kind of like our conference in the industry, right? Like, other people have industry conferences. I feel like that's the Super Bowl for all media.
Got to make that note, Media Row. My old age is getting to me. But, Amber, let's get into the nitty-gritty. We're talking about the Raiders, what they're going to look like this season and beyond. But before we can look at what they're going to do in free agency, the draft, they got to take care of their own house, right? And it kind of all starts on the defensive line. Max Crosby under contract, but that's got to get work to get that guaranteed money back in. And then when you look at the defensive line in its totality, it was a group that was supposed to be kind of the backbone of this team going into last season. Injuries obviously played a part, but now some big questions in free agency as it pertains to their own guys.
Yeah, look, I think they have some decisions to make about who that they want to re-sign as free agents. When you said that they were supposed to be the strength of this team, they were, because they brought over Christian Wilkins as a huge free agent, and anytime you pair him with Max Crosby, you're expecting big things. And remember, Malcolm Kuntz was coming off of a huge season the year before where he really broke out, and there was a lot of excitement about having him at defensive end. And then the expectation was that Tyree Wilson was going to take a big step forward in year 2, being a former first-round draft pick, and especially having him play at times on the inside. He really seemed more comfortable at the end of 23 playing there. So that was the intention of what the defensive line was supposed to be. That didn't happen because of injury. And what we saw was the emergence of some other players come about. We really got a good look at a guy like Adam Butler, who was going to be a free agent, and in my opinion, he really earned the right. He came on Raiders game day and said, I want to earn my contract. I didn't get the money I felt in my last contract. I wanted to go out there and prove it, and I think he did that. He really showed a knack for getting after the ball, getting after quarterbacks, and being kind of a smart and aggressive lineman that was able to rush the passer. We also saw the emergence of K'Lavon Chaisson, who was a first-round pick with the Jacksonville Jaguars and had 4 unimpressive years in Jacksonville, and then comes over and with Patrick Graham is able to find some success. Now, I don't know if they signed both Chaisson and Kuntz. I think the decision will have to be between one of those two. See, everybody's here right now. You know, was that Brian Baldinger? It's a good friend of Raiders Silver and Black Productions. But I think that you maybe go with Malcolm Kuntz, although he's probably going to cost a little bit more money. So you're right. They do have a lot of things they need to figure out. They've got John Jenkins as a free agent as well. So I do think that will be a strength if you're able to sign somebody like a Malcolm Kuntz. Tyree Wilson, we did see him take a step. It was a little slower than people thought, but really at the end of the year, he started to come on and show that the game is slowing down for him. And then when you get Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby back and healthy, this will be a strength of the Raiders.
Amber Baldy heard that defensive line talk, and he couldn't help himself. He had to come over and get in on the conversation.
Did you get the pinky? Did you get the crooked pinky in the shot or not? I couldn't tell what happened.
It's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But like a good running back, let's hit the second level and let's talk the middle linebacker, Robert Spillane. What a year to have a career year, right? Here he comes over from Pittsburgh, kind of finds himself, reinvents himself, and then has a great year, turns it into a career year this past season. One of the tops in terms of tackles, but he showed he's an every down guy, pass defense as well. How big of a priority is keeping Robert Spillane now that Patrick Graham is back as DC for the Raiders?
I think it's great that Patrick Graham was retained as the defensive coordinator, because perhaps a new guy coming in wouldn't fully appreciate or understand what Robert Spillane brings to the Raiders. To me, he was a Pro Bowl snub. I just got back from Orlando, and I think that he should have been on that Pro Bowl roster. He was number 3 in tackles with 158, and if you remember when he came over from the Steelers, the knock was that he wasn't good in coverage. Well, he's a guy that got 2 interceptions. We saw that last year as well. He has a knack for being a ball hawk. He's able to pick the ball off. And I think what he brings as far as a kind of blue collar, hard hat, bring your lunch pail mentality to this Raiders defense, that's what is invaluable. He is a leader. Patrick Graham has said, when I know that he's out there, I know that everything's under control. You know, he is a guy that can handle all of the defense. So I think his value is really underestimated in this league. The guy had 158 tackles. He's one of the better tacklers in open space in the NFL. To me, he is a priority, no doubt, and I'm glad that Patrick Graham is here because he knows that he should be a priority.
Yeah, heart and soul guy, a Raider through and through, it seems, and as you mentioned, Patrick Graham talked about being an extension of him on the field, so it does feel like that's a priority. Let's go to the secondary. This feels like the biggest mystery box of the entire roster reconstruction. We heard Pete Carroll during his introductory press conference talk about there's going to be a lot of transactions going through this offseason in terms of getting the right guys. And when you look at this secondary, maybe the biggest question marks are in this DB room when you talk about a Marcus Epps coming off injury, Nate Hobbs dealing with injury, also looking for a new contract, and then Trayvon Merrick, a guy 25 years old, homegrown, drafted, has a career year as well. A ton of decisions to make for the Silver and Black here.
There are a lot of decisions, and I was just talking to our friend James Jones. I was talking to our friend Steve Smith Sr., and they talked a lot, about the secondary. I do think that Trayvon Merrick is somebody that you need to resign. To me, that is the priority. He had a breakout year in his 4th year. He was a 2nd-round pick. Unfortunately, they don't have a 5th-year option because he was selected in the 2nd round, so they're going to have to pay him, and that's going to cost money. The good thing is the Raiders have, you probably know the number more than me, about $140 million in cap space, so they're going to be able to resign their own. And to me, Trayvon Merrick, it starts with him. He's going to be and is already emerging as a premier safety in the league. I think Marcus Epps is a question, and Hobbs as well is a question mark. Both, have been injured at times, and I think Marcus Epps is one of the toughest safeties out there. He is a banger, and you need those people in your secondary. Pete Carroll knows about the Legion of Boom. The boom part was the part that could hit you. To me, that's Marcus Epps. The question is, can he stay healthy? And the same with Hobbs. The last 2 years, there's been quite a few injuries. So I don't know if Nate Hobbs will be as much of a priority as somebody like Trayvon Merrick. To me, the priority should be Trayvon Merrick, Marcus Epps, and then Hobbs.
Yeah, a ton of mouths to feed. And to your point, 2nd most cap space in the National Football League. The Raiders do have, so there is money to go around. But where do you put it? I do remember, I can't forget the Marcus Epps scene where players are wearing his jersey walking into Allegiant Stadium the week after he tears his ACL. So he's a heart and soul guy. And then Trayvon Merrick obviously showed his range, playing almost in a different role and an ultimate communicator in that defensive backfield. We'll see how that one plays out. But okay, let's switch to the offensive side of the ball. I want to talk a little bit about Jakobi Meyers, and obviously with Chip Kelly coming on as offensive coordinator, Raider Nation is kind of salivating at what Chip Kelly can bring offensively and the points and the different kind of innovations he brings. Jakobi Meyers, a career year for him as well. How much better can Jakobi get in a Chip Kelly type offense who enjoys to run the ball?
Look, just because somebody enjoys running the ball doesn't mean that they aren't going to use the receivers. Obviously you establish the run, and that opens up the passing game. So I think that could be a good thing in a Chip Kelly offense. Jakobi Meyers is probably, to me, one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL. He kind of quietly had a 1,000-yard season. A lot of veteran receivers that I talked to regard him as one of the best route runners. He's really crafty. I think because he's not super fast, he's not going to just kill you downfield like a Trey Tucker. There's not all that flash, but he is a consistent receiver. And I think he doesn't get enough credit. And you pair him along with Brock Bowers. Look, next year, Brock Bowers is going to get a ton of double coverage. You're just going to have to. And so if you're going to roll a safety over, that is going to open up so much for Jakobi Meyers. So I see everything looking up for Jakobi to have an even better year in 2025. And look, you sprinkle in a Trey Tucker, who's a young guy. We're still learning what he can do. Using his speed to kind of beat you over the top and downfield, I think is going to be a nice mix in a Chip Kelly offense.
Okay, so you brought up Brock Bowers, 13th overall last year in April's draft. Everybody was kind of warning, the Raiders missed out on a quarterback that draft, but hey, you might have just gotten a generational talent at tight end fall into your lap. And I have to look down at the notes to make sure I get all the records that Brock Bowers broke. Most records for receiving yards for a rookie tight end, most receiving yards by a rookie in NFL history. So again, pick a record, he broke it. Decade-old records for Brock Bowers. Feels like the ceiling, there is none with a Chip Kelly type offense. What can we expect from Brock Bowers, the innovation with Chip Kelly moving forward?
Imagine if Chip Kelly's running game gets going, and I think a big question mark, we have to acknowledge it, is who's going to run the football, right? I just saw Josh Jacobs walking around here. They let Josh Jacobs go. He goes and has a huge year with the Packers. They thought Zamir White was somebody based on the last 4 games of 2023 that could step in and be productive. It didn't turn out. He got injured. So, sprinkles of Sincere McCormick. We just didn't have the run game that was expected. So in a Chip Kelly offense, I imagine that bringing in a free agent running back, or it's a very deep draft for running backs this year, we could see a new rookie come in. And so imagine if that run game gets going and you've got to drop an extra safety, an extra man down into the box, and you've got to leave Brock Bowers exposed, and Jakobi Meyers as well. I think Brock Bowers is going to have a huge year if we can get that run game going somehow. Brock was phenomenal, what he was able to do. I think his mentality mentality is way advanced and mature for as far as football is concerned. You know, it takes young tight ends especially a long time to transition from college to the NFL. I've covered this game a long time. It's one of the hardest positions to transition. I think playing in the SEC at Georgia in the SEC helped him with that. But his mentality of every time I catch the ball, I'm going to get the yards after catch because I'm going to plant my foot and turn upfield and go vertical. So I think now that he has a year under his belt, if you imagine if a Chip Kelly running game's going to get going, wow, look out for Brock Bowers just across the middle all day and every day in the AFC West. I'm excited about the thought of that.
That is our very own Amber Theoharis on Media Row. Amber, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us here on the 2025 Raiders Media Row Show. Plenty more on Friday, 6 o'clock Pacific time. Join us with an all-new list of primetime superstar lists. Until then, I'm Vince Sapienza. We'll see you then.